I didn't see you there. Hello everyone, it's been a while, hasn't it? Welcome to Scrolls from the Past. A sort of reboot to a a single video I did many years ago, where I would shamelessly rip off Spoonie's Counter Monkey, and here I am again to rip it off even more. Hopefully with a slightly nicer set, a more interesting editing, and overall just a little bit more age. Such are things. So, what do I want to talk about today? Well, it's an old story from about 4 years ago or so, about a certain IRC role-playing server called Sanguinus. Now, you might have many questions right now, such as, what the hell is IRC if you're of a certain age? It's the predecessor to what you would find today, such as Discord or, for the slightly older, TeamSpeak. It's a service to chat. It can be hosted by anybody, so it's very libertine that way. And it is overall a very interesting web service. It's been around for quite some time, and it has its charms, it has some issues, but overall it's quite good with archival and such things. And IRC was how we chatted for a long time. It's very easy, you just make a nickname, you don't need an account. You just need to know the dash something something and you're in. For the most part, some had their own private servers. You could link it up to a website, and in the case of Sanguinus, it was. Sanguinus.org is how I first found about it. Well, I first heard about it from some Reddit thread, I assume, many years ago. You see, I was doing a werewolf game in Worlds of Darkness. I can't remember if it was the Apocalypse or the new one. I think it was the Apocalypse. And werewolf, I'm going to talk about that campaign maybe in other episodes. I won't go into too much details, but the whole World of Darkness setting is extremely intriguing to me. So I thought, well, why not look for other sources of role-playing in World of Darkness? Why not, check out what I can do? And I found Sanguinus, a 24-hour role-play IRC. So I joined. I made an account, I created a character, had it approved by moderators, which, if I recall, was relatively speedy service, and hopped on the IRC after having chosen Hex Chat as my chatting IRC of choice. Because, as I said, everything is open in IRC, so you can even choose your own program. You're not limited to just using something like Discord, which just abandoned Linux and other many issues. So, what was Sanguinus? Well, as I said, it was a Vampire the Masquerade 24-hour roleplay. Vampire the Masquerade, if you don't know, it's the first RPG in World of Darkness's many RPGs. Here is the Sabbat. But it's a similar thing. You're playing a vampire, cursed kin of Cain, slave to his hunger, trapped between humanity and undeadness. Very dramatic, very fun, tons of lore, only slightly schizophrenic, absolutely lovely stuff. I really enjoy it. And hey, the system is actually pretty good, unlike many more roleplay focused things that came after. This was the original roleplay focused RPG, if you would believe it. Well, one of the first. I'm sure if you look, you'll find some older stuff, but this one was called the the Storyteller system. So that gives a good idea of what it was. And there was a lot of intrigue about it, and I really wanted to check it out. Just get out of just the werewolves, which was very different. So I made a character. And so here is how Sanguinus worked for the most part. There was one main channel, which was out of character. Of course, you could chat, everybody was talking and such, organizing slightly little things. But At any time, anybody could enter any of the many channels which represented different places that your character could be at one time. For example, there was the Elysium, which is the vampire sort of place of meeting. It's generally a place where you talk and complain about stuff, sort of like a modern square town, give or take. And you had different places, the slums, as well as a few places that were limited to certain clans, because of course there's vampire clans and there's different kinds. And the first character I made for Sanguinus was called Antoine. He was a big French muscle man, and of course any big French muscle man and vampire is of the clan Bruja, or as later came to be known, Brojo, at least in the Sanguinus, because nobody knew how to pronounce it. Frankly, I'm not even sure how myself. Also, don't worry, it's not just French because I'm French-Canadian. The game actually happened in Louisiana, in its own town by the name of New Corsica. That was one thing a bit different. In World of Darkness, generally games happen in real life with real cities and not real people. But Sanguinus always had its own towns, which means they had their own lore and a whole bunch of different stuff. So it made for a very nice perspective. I enjoyed it. It's not how I would run it, but wasn't like a single tabletop game. As I said, it was a big public thing with moderators, many storytellers, and all kinds of stuff. So, what was Antoine's deal? Well, it was pretty standard Brojo stuff outside of being French. There was, he enjoyed fighting, he enjoyed rebelling, he was a good fan of all-around violence. Very similar to my werewolf character with the serial numbers filed off. And he didn't last very long. And that's another thing that's different from what you would find in modern sort of Discord roleplay groups and such. Your character could die. In fact, they could die very easily. Not in combat. I don't think I ever was in combat. I think once. Generally, it was executions or general tomfoolery by the rest of the vampires. Indeed. And Antoine, he was kind of that. When I made that character, there was a sort of subplot, because there's generally some kind of subplot that vampires can get into, about a riot going into town. People were angry and people wanted change, because, of course, it's a bit grimdark, it's vampire and the city was always raining and such. And, of course, I wanted my character to get in on the action, get some violence done, beat up some rioters, be a bit of a bad guy, of course, indulge in the beast and such. And that's what the character did. And then he walked into Elysium with some blood on him. Now, do keep in mind, while Elysium is private, and it is a sort of sanctum for the vampires, it's also publicly hidden. It's like it was the second stage of a bar or a nightclub, I think, of some kind. And so, of course, you need to walk there, and, you could be followed. This is some bloody guy right after a riot. And when I arrived into the Elysium, let's just say everybody was looking at Antoine, and they were not happy. Ooh, they were not happy at all. And it did not take long for the authorities to be informed of my little blunder, and it did not end well for Antoine's short ride. I don't recall if it was now or later. I think it might have been soon, but not exactly at that moment. But there was a whole proceedings. He was arrested by the marshal. I can't recall. That's not the right term. I think it's the hand. No. I wouldn't need to research up on the terms for the vampire, because there's a lot of them, but Jesus, there's a lot of terms. The wiki is nothing but terms. So, sorry about that one. Don't recall the rules of vampire society. And he got arrested, as I said, and he was brought along to a great big trial. Everybody was there. I think there was a forum post about it, so everybody knew to be there. And he was executed. There was also some very nice stuff with a lovely vampire lady using her shadow magic to hold me to the ground and chop off my head off with a giant shadow axe, if I recall. It's a bit edgy, but let's just say the descriptions were long and very nice. I appreciate the amount of effort. Now, this was a bit of a wake-up call for me. I quite enjoyed the character, especially since, I made it for the werewolf game, so I brought it over because I just wanted to play more of him, basically. And this was a very clear message that Sanguinus did not fuck around. If you are gonna rock the boat, you're gonna meet the waves. That was the fun part. And yeah, I kind of did a bit of a stupid at that one. I'm gonna be honest, this one was completely on me. And as I said, there was a very nice death scene. And I mentioned the forum, because yes, of course there was a forum. It was an IRC thing. Of course there was a fucking forum. There's always a forum if there's a website. At least that's how it was back then on the internet. And there was a lot of fun stuff on the forum. Notably a random quotes from whatever roleplay or out of character thing was said. Very fun. Of course you never had the context, which is the best part. There was also a wiki, believe it or not. Now, sadly, the wiki was private, so it was hard to get in if you didn't have an account. But it did contain sort of private information, so I can understand. It contained sort of character sheets for all of the characters. You could put your image there and it would look it up if you searched who or used command lines in the IRC. And everybody did their own little wiki character sheet. I never made one for Antoine. He didn't last long enough. Yeah. My next character, though, lasted much longer. Clive Cromer, PI. The PI stands for paranormal as well as private. He was, as I just said, a private investigator. He was also a Malkavian. Now, many of you at home who know about vampire might have raised a bit of an eyebrow. Malkavians are quite infamous in vampire. They're the crazy ones. They can see into the future, sort of, and mostly have some kind of derangement, which was how it was called back. Nowadays, more so, like back then it was just like, you're crazy, and it was just kind of a vague term of what craziness is, Nowadays, it wants you to use derangements, which are more sort of a shorter version of a real mental illness, which is a bit more realistic rather than just generic madness, which is fun, but it's not very descriptive, is it? So, a Malkavian, yes. This, said Malkavian Clive Cromer. So, what was his derangement? Well, you see, I had written a very nice backstory, partially written using a random background generator, which I think I might spend an entire episode on in the future at some point, because I really, really love these books. I think they're called Know Your Role. There's a few of them for different settings. They're fucking magic. Absolutely magical. So, love these things, and they indeed worked to make a very nice and very tragic backstory for Clive. I won't go too much into detail, it's not super relevant, but he saved his girlfriend from being kidnapped, and then he was killed, and then she was killed, and he fell into a big depression, and he was interned at a mental asylum, and of course, mental asylums is where Malkavians are generally, and he got inoculated into the vampire life. And ever since then, he believes that he is followed by the ghost of his dead girlfriend. Of course, it's not a ghost. There is no ghost. There never was a ghost to begin with. But he believes hard as hard that it's a ghost, despite people that can see spirits telling him there is none. He says, yeah, but we don't know how the universe works. And that was the other part. He was into the pie in the sky stuff. He was not exactly a conspiracy nut, but he was willing to believe anything. Part of his money was made writing a internet forum. about, strange happenings and the paranormal. Everybody thought like it was mostly stories because he had good prose, but he thought it was all real. That was sort of the gimmick of the Malkavian gimmick, because there's always a gimmick with the Malkavians. Some would say they're kind of gimmick characters. I would disagree, but a lot of them play them poorly. I played mine intentionally so to try and get away from that stereotype. Clive was very well spoken. He never used contractions to seem a bit more formal, as it were. And as such, he fit in a lot more with the rest of the Elysium and the rest of the Sanguinus crowd. He did not get executed. In fact, he didn't die at all. But there was many stories of him doing things he shouldn't, because he's a private investigator, damn it. He's gonna investigate whether people want to or not. Such as one very fun story, which I recall quite well, about a special sort of party happening. It was one of those sort of events, which there was once in a while, not weekly, but maybe monthly or every 2 months or so, irregularly, I suppose. And things were already pretty weird. It wasn't just vampires there, and thanks to a few good perception rolls, I managed to see non-vampires lurking around, doing sigils, doing what seemed to be magic. Now, in Vampire the Masquerade, magic is a really, really big deal. There is a few vampire clans that do things similar to magic. The Tsumishi can do blood alchemy and flesh crafting and such. And I think it's the Ventru who can cast blood spells using blood. But that is absolute nothing compared to what real mages can do, who can pretty much rewrite reality as long as nobody notices. Clive didn't really know the extent of that, but he had a pretty good feeling that mages were a thing that existed, because as again, he rolled well. So of course, he followed them in the back. This was looking like this party was an actual ritual. He was on the fucking trail. And he managed to corner a wizard. The wizard who was doing random stuff. I think nothing really super malicious at the time. I think it was just messing with computers or checking the track list or something like that. And he pulled out his gun. Gun being a Luger PO8, because he came from like German immigrants, and he kept his father's gun. It was like a treasured piece of machinery. He always kept it super clean, kind of OCD like. And so he pulled it out, and it was like, "You're gonna give me answer, you son of a bitch. What the fuck is this?" And the moment that the mage just looked at him, didn't really even say much. He just said, "This is none of your business, and you should just go back to the party." And he was like, "You're gonna give me answer, you son of a bitch, or I'm gonna shoot you in the face." And of course, at that point, the mage said, and the gun fell into pieces on the floor as he just, it didn't really fall into pieces, just sort of jammed when he tried to pull the trigger, just kind of clunk, and nothing worked. The bullet was stuck, nothing would fire, everything like that. And by the time he could even think about clearing the jam, the mage had already fucked off. Of course, this, I managed to keep the suspicion going by having Clive say that, it's a precision German piece of instrument. I've kept it in perfect shape for years. It should not jam. And yet it did. Because, any proof of magic was like, this implies so many things. And he was just like going, oh, but this, but then this implies that. And all that. So, he didn't really get too far. He managed to get a little bit more info. He questioned some people and managed to find out that whatever the ritual was, it didn't really amount to anything catastrophic, I don't think, or I didn't really notice. The elder vampires of the court were in cahoots with the mages. Clive didn't really live that down well, but never really brought it to much else, because by the time the event had ended, There was not much information to be found, so it wasn't soup. It kind of ended there. There was a lot of loose threads because that's the thing with Sanguinus. You're not the main character. This is not an RPG campaign. You are just a vampire, and you are living your life. If you don't find answers, well, you didn't find answers. There's no special story there to be found. Sorry. And that's just how it went sometimes on Sanguinus, especially if you played a character that was especially if you played a character that was more investigative like Clive. Sometimes you'd get clues, sometimes you'd go there and you didn't really find much. There was a lot of STs, as I said, storytellers, and a lot of, there wasn't too many to go around. They were very busy most of the time, so if you wanted to do like a single character thing with NPCs and such, it wasn't easy and it wasn't super long. If you didn't really know exactly what to do, you were kind of fucked. It wasn't going to go anywhere. That's just kind of where it went. As I said, it was a bit more realistic than some. Such is life. I don't remember too many stories about Clive, and to be fair, outside of that one, there wasn't too much else. There was a moment where a prank was pulled by having one of the, I think it was the prince's personal boat crashed right next to the Elysium, which was nowhere near the coast. I'm not sure who did that one. Tried investigating, didn't find shit. It was funny as all hell, though, because that's the thing. Another thing that Malkavians have is they're also pranksters. They like pranks, especially on people with authority, like the prince, which is the main leader of a city. And Clive himself didn't like pranks, but the spirit that followed him everywhere, who was named Ash, sort of had all the other traits of personality of the Malkavian. So whatever she would find, so she would find pranks funny and she would find it hilarious. So it was kind of like he would tell her to stop, and he would, look at nothing and say, "Hey, stop that! Stop laughing! This isn't funny." So you'd still get some of the Malkavian secondhand embarrassment going on, which honestly was my favorite part of playing him. There is many moments of him just being at the Elysium talking, which was most of the role plays in all honesty, and he would start talking and generally get some amount of intention when he would start talking a lot, because he would start spitting crazy stories of conspiracies, higher beings, elder gods, a bit of a Lovecraft thing. I was really into Lovecraft at the time. And things like that. And sometimes work well. Like at one point he explained his entire backstory, and some of the more emotional vampires were nearly sobbing at the end. I really made it tragic as all hell when I wrote it down. And Clive seemed like completely non-fazed by it. He was like, but I'm still with my lover, so it's fine. At one point, somebody did mention, like, who the hell are you talking to? There's nobody on that couch. And he said, it's my dead girlfriend. It's her spirit. There's a ghost. And the person he was talking to could actually have an ability where you can see spirits. One of the things that you can do as a vampire if you have the right disciplines. So he rolled, and he did the things, and the storyteller said, you see nothing, even though he succeeded. So he's like, there's no ghost there. And it was like, yeah, there is. You're just like, even if you can't always see higher planes, even though you think you can. So he was sort of deflecting the answer more than answering to the real thing. Because obviously, like, a Malkavian can't get rid of his derangement. Kinda can, but not forever. Besides, where the fun if they lose it, right? And that was the fun part with Clive. I really liked that character. There were many reactions to him. As I said, some surprise, a bit of shame. Other fellow Malkavians didn't really have a problem to him, which was fun. The Malkavian had their own sort of hideout, which was a shed near the mental hospital. And the leader of the Malkavian did like him well enough. As I said, he was very logical and well spoken, so he went well with the upper crust, which was a lot of the things, a lot of the storytellers, big characters and such, they were the most active, so they were the most present. So if you were a character that didn't go well with authority, there might have been some friction. But with Clive was pretty smooth. So things went well for a while like this, until one fateful day, while locked on and heard talks of a Discord. Now, this was the program Discord, and there was talks of a Discord server. It was also the start of real Discord, but I'll get to that in a bit. So, I pieced out a few things recently, doing my own little Clive-style schizophrenic internet investigation, and found that the original creator of Sanguinus had started to do real life LARPs, like one-off, 1 year LARPs, called The Night in Question, which was a Sabbat LARP, which is this here, which is a different clan than the one that we were doing. The Sabbat are generally much more violent and generally a bit more, and by a bit I mean extremely more fanatical than anything you could get from the main clan that we were playing. I've got a slight the Camarilla, that's it. Then the Camarilla, which was on the IRC. And anyway, so he did the thing, and he was in actual, Louisiana, or at least in that era. And a lot of the main storytellers and the big players on the server were in that general area. Apparently, they even went to a wedding at some point of one of the main administrators. Super fun stuff, apparently. And so these storytellers, when they went to his The Night in Question LARP, they wanted to continue using their characters. And to do so, they opened up a Discord for Sanguinus, the first one ever. Now, this went with some upsides and some downsides. The plan was to have the IRC keep going on for the main Camarilla game, and to have the IRC and have the Discord be more for the Sabbat offshoot. It wouldn't be the main game, it would just be like a little spin-off thing. That was fine. I was kind of interested, so I joined the Discord, especially more for the social aspect, because you can do voice chat and such. And in Discord, there was a lot of good stuff, and that's what it was for a while. Things were being prepared to, as I said, continue their Sabbat thing in the Discord by doing another 24-hour thing with Sabbat characters, which would be called The Night in Question. And that's what they did for a while. No, at least they prepared. Meanwhile, me and the others got to know each other a bit more in the Discord. We were doing, movie nights. I remember watching Tiger King with some of the administrators and such. They talked about, as I said, the marriage. One of the people came back from another state entirely and tried brisket for the first time and had a spiritual revelation. All kinds of super fun stories. I loved the time there. I was in the voice chat almost every night, right? Because I really enjoyed my time with these people. Because I already enjoyed my time doing IRC with these same people. Now, as I've said, this was a bit of a spin-off, and the original admin, the original creator, and the guy who made the voice in question, the Night in Question, had nothing to do with the Discord. He just joined it and was barely even there. Just wanted to say that for what comes after. So, let's talk about The Night in Question. So, I made a character. I made a priest character who was already pretty different from the rest of the people who made characters, because it was a rave, and then the rave would turn bloody, and we'd be shovel-headed, which means you get beat over the head with a shovel, shoved into a pit, turned into a vampire, and whoever crawls out is introduced into the Sabbat. So I made a priest, sort of crooked padre kind of character who came out here to get a girl, to get a sermon, because he had sort of a power hungry kind of spot going on. Because if it was going to be okay with the Sabbat, he had to be a bit of an asshole in spots, right? Otherwise, all of the Sabbat mind wiping shit wouldn't stick as well. So, I made him a bit of a bad guy, though it didn't really appear as such. So the party was going on. He was asking people, have you seen this girl? Doing a bit of a investigative thing going on. Nobody knew. And then came time for the shovel. Tonk, right over the head. Everybody gets turned. Everybody crawls out. I'm trying to be a bit dramatic. I'm doing a role-playing scene. He's kind of insane, like, because you wake up, you're super hungry, you have no blood in you. You have like that much blood, like 20 millimeters of vampire blood, and that's it. So everybody's like, so that's what the Sabbats want, right? Like everybody's attacking each other. Everybody's like crawling out. They just got buried fucking alive. Mental state deteriorating as the seconds pass by. And then everybody's ushered back into the club. And then it starts raining blood. And it's this whole fucking thing. And he's being like, he's doing the Padre thing. He's being like, the mana from heaven, priest be unto us, whatever the hell. And I'm not exactly sure what happened at that point. My memory's a bit fuzzy. But what I remember is that he bumped into somebody, or maybe he angered somebody in the club, some higher rate vampire. And he was like, you're going to watch yourself, motherfucker, or I'm going to beat your ass, I'm going to kill you. As I said, spirits will hide. That was the thing. Super dramatic. And then Padre did a oopsie. He did the same error as Antoine did all those months ago. He kept going. He pulled out a gun, which he had hidden in his Bible. In his Bible. Because, like you open the Bible and it's cut out and there's a shape for a revolver. So to show that, he doesn't really believe in all that stuff. And so he pulls out the revolver. That is called escalating the situation. If I had not escalated, I might have just gotten beat up. Or just left there. But instead, he escalated as well. And pulled out a katana. Yes, an actual real katana. In 1990s Texas. Rust Belt ass fucking Texas. Don't ask me where he got a katana. I have no idea. And he turned around because apparently you can't kill another vampire until you have the approval of a sire, or the guy who turned him into a vampire. So he just turned around and said, hey, can I kill this guy? And he was like, I don't give a shit. So him and then 2 or 3 other vampires jumped on him, killed him, and drank all of his fucking blood. And that is how Father whoever the fuck didn't last a single session. He didn't. This is a 24-hour game. He didn't even last at like 2 hours. He was dead before anything started. I was shocked. I was appalled that this had happened. I had spent like the better part of a week making the character, writing the backstory, doing all the... Because, World of Darkness, as I said, it's a storytelling game, but the character sheets are pretty chunky. I don't know if there's one in there. Yep, there is. Here we go. I don't know if you can see it too well, but this is what a character sheet looks like for World of Darkness. There's quite a few things you can put in there. It's a lot of dots, but it's a pretty chunky character sheet. As I said, this is not powered by the apocalypse. It can take a while, and you got to get it approved, and then they want you to change things, so you got to change it and get it approved. It was a whole process. I had even, because there was plans of doing live games as well, so I was even practicing a voice for the character, doing like a Texas accent and things. Like I was doing practice for the voice as well, and I was getting pretty good. So I had invested emotionally and time-wise quite a lot into this character, and he was just fucking dead on the floor, not even bleeding out, because he was emptied. Just a dry, dead fucking husk on the floor. And I was feeling about the same. I had to take a break. I felt emptied as well. It was not fun. It was dramatic, sure. But now here I was with a new fucking chronicle, and I had no character again. And this is when I noticed things were kind of changing a bit. I noticed at times they were changing. Because after that, as I said, I had to make a character. And I tried a lot of different ideas, and suddenly I encountered a lot more friction than I did before. Whereas usually before I would, get a character idea, show them to one of the STs, and they would give me some feedback, give me, hey, maybe don't put all of your points in one stat right now, min-maxing doesn't really fit the character. So I was like, alright, that's fair enough, change a few things, and I'm like, alright, sounds good. This time, I was like, alright, here's the character idea, and I was like, nope, not doing that, doesn't fit. Okay, here's another different character idea, and it was like, nope, doesn't work. I was like, okay, here's another one. And then she was like, okay, what about like he's a good old boy? And that's a Texan concept I had never heard of today, and still don't really understand too much. It's like sort of upper middle class dandy stuff, like sort of white trash but rich. Didn't really understand it back then, and still don't really now. And I was not really interested into that, so I kind of went no. And finally, after I think maybe a week of every day being told that idea doesn't work, that character don't fit, finally I came up with a character that worked. I was like, okay, so this is some. I don't even know what clan he was in. Like, that was how little he lasted. I was like, okay, here's this character. He's some slightly not so survivalist type, like with a bomb shelter and stuff. Like, he's really a gun nut. And he was like, alright, that works. I was like, okay, he's going to be like the combat guy. He's going to be the gun dude. And at the time, I was really into a specific gun, which is the MAS 4956. It's normal if you haven't heard of it. It's an old French military gun that we used between the years of 1949 and 1956. It's the ancestor of the FAMAS, which came right after. I like it because the design is fucking weird. It's got like this toothpaste tube-as loading mechanism, and the clip is held with like a literal fucking paper clip, like a cow clip. It is the stuff of dreams. I love that gun. So, of course, I wanted that to be sort of a signature gun. Just a really weird thing to show he's a bit of a collector. Now, the MAS 49 is a semi-automatic battle rifle. Yes. This seems quite random to say in a video about vampires. And it would be. Except that, as I said, this not built for combat much, so it abstracts weapons. If you want you kind of have like, if you want a rifle, like a military rifle, it's automatic. There's not really any option that was similar to that one. If you wanted something semi-auto in the rules, like the rules are different for like manual weapons and full auto rifles. So I was like, okay, I'll take the stats of this gun, say it's a MAS 4956, and just never use the automatic function. I'll just say it's semi-auto and not use the automatic. In my mind, that wasn't much of a problem. And as I said, the character sheet was approved and I had the thing there. Of course, nobody would expect a storyteller of a vampire game to know what the fuck that gun is. Nobody does. Even gun nerds don't know about it too much. Not that it's obscure much, but it's not particularly impressive, right? It's one of these guns that never saw any wars, really, so I think it's fair enough. So, first, introduction to the character. Here I come to the Sabbat base. I'm like, yes, fucking Kane, hallelujah, he's the best. Fucking vampires rule, mortals rule. Yeah. Full jingoistic. And he was like, yeah, I'm a gun guy, I love guns, and I pledged my gun for Kane. And I showed off the gun, and I was like, yeah, this is my gun, and it's semi-automatic, and dead. At that very moment, it seemed like the storytellers were watching me like a fucking hawk for some reason. They pull me in aside, tell me, oh, we're gonna need to talk in the storyteller private channel. And I was like, oh, motherfucker, what did I do this time? Like, you just send the kid off to see the principal. So I come in, and here I am. So what's the problem? And he was like, you just said this is a semi-auto rifle, but the character sheet, that is not. It's fully automatic. What the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, I didn't really find a character that fits. I just wasn't planning on firing it automatically because it's a choice when you shoot a gun in this thing. And he was like, that's not gonna work. Why are you always breaking the rules? You're always doing this. You're a pain in our ass. And I was like, where the fuck is this coming from? We've been on the Discord for the better part of a few months max. I barely made a character once, and the rest of it was just me chatting or being in the voice chat or watching a movie or something. Like, where's the fucking issue? And where the hell was this coming from? And they were laying it on thick. They did not. Suddenly, they didn't like me at all. And I had no idea where the hell this was coming from. And I was like, you're fucking banned. You're banned from this Discord. Get the fuck out of here. And I was in shock. I was in pure another shock. I was panicking like hell. I took every person I knew in there. I sent a friend invite to every single person. I was scrambling because they were going to ban me in 20 seconds. Well, more like a couple minutes. So I scramble, send friend invites. I try and write something in the chat being like, hey, sorry guys, this was great. I love you all. Yada, yada, yada. And banned. I checked the forums. Also banned. They booted me out of Sanguinis as a whole, except for the IRC. So I went back to the IRC, and guess what? It was fucking deader than doornails. Nobody was there except 2 people. I was like, hi, what the hell? What's going on? They were like, everybody's on the Discord. And I was like, oh, of course it is. So here I was, alone for the most part. Not many people accepted the friend invite, and I felt like garbage. Seriously, it wasn't a depression, but it was close enough. Standing in the rain kind of deal. I felt defeated. I had spent the better part of a year loving these people, talking to these people, getting to know these people, and suddenly you just get cut off like that. It's something that stings you into your goddamn soul, personally. And it was rough. It was real rough. So, what did I do? Well, there wasn't much I could do at that point. So, I waited. And I talked to some people. And I think it was a year later. I talked to some of the people I added as friends with, as I said, right before I left. And I got an image of what happened after I was banned. Since you might be wondering, I was curious as hell as well. And what apparently happened afterwards is that the mods kind of started a bit of a power trip. It might have been burnout, I'm not sure. But they kind of started power tripping. They started laying it on thick to anybody that was going on against them. Why exactly, it's hard to tell. One of the person I talked to, which I'm not going to say their name for, anonymity's sake, even though I don't think they use that nickname anymore, said, I sort of had this theory when I talked to him that at the time, We were on the tail end of the first Trump administration, and they kind of got the Trump derangement syndrome from that, where they got really aggressive, like you're with us or you're against us kind of deal. And maybe that was a factor, because apparently they really like swung the pendulum to the other direction, and anybody that wasn't with them 100% was kicked out apparently. And apparently people were starting to get really scared of saying anything for fear of being banned. Again, allegedly, according to what I heard. I wasn't there. Hearsay is the best I can do, and you can't really find it again, so I'm getting to that. So I couldn't corroborate anything. But apparently people were like walking on eggshells. And at some point, 3 important figures in the server got banned all at once. Just full on IP banned. And they were very well liked and very enjoyed by the rest of the community. And the day after these 3 people got banned, the entire Discord turned into a ghost town. Tons of people had left, and the people that's still there just completely disconnected and did not interact in any way with the rest of the Discord. It was just silent. So at that point, the population had cratered. The interest of the mods were, I assume, in the negatives. The burnout was probably real, if I had to guess. And so the 24-hour game was shuttered. And instead, Sanguinus became a session-based TTRPG. You know, the usual stuff where, you know, each week they would do a session. And I assume the players would rotate in a sort of West March kind of deal. If I had to. As again, I'm assuming. Because I'm not there. And I don't have much information. I really wish I did. I did my due diligence. I researched as much as I could, but it's hard to find. Because, as I said before, everything was linked to the website. It used nothing external, which is cool for customization. But the moment the site goes down, everything else goes with it. Because it's around in 2022, I think that I noticed, that sanguinus.org, the website, was down. And with sanguinus.org being down, that meant the wiki was down, the IRC was dead and down, the forum were deader than doornails, and the website itself is gone. You could find some pages on the Internet Archive, but as usual, you can see the forum, but you can't enter a page, and you can see the website, and you can see the entrance of the wiki, but you can't see the pages because you had to have an account. And the account obviously haven't backed up because that's not how the Internet Archive works. So all that shit's dead, unfoundable, just gone into the ether of the internet. So, yeah. So as I said, the Discord is still around, but that never was done by Matt Stormcrow, the creator of Sanguinus. Which means that at some point when the IRC was sucked dry by the vampire that is Discord, he shuttered it after, I assume, he had lost interest, and everybody did as well. You know, all those storytellers just weren't there to keep it afloat. Because you needed them. Without the storytellers to run like the admin commands and such, it didn't work. And so, yeah, that's how the sanguinus.org ended. Resquiescat in paces, Sanguinus. So, what remains now? What's the postmortem? Well, the Discord, as I said, it's still around, but you used to be able to find an entrance on the forum, but since the forum's dead, you can't find any way on there anymore. So you can't join it. And if you did, there's a good chance it'd be banned by whatever mods remained. The hell if I know what the hell it looks like. Probably Mad Max if I had to hazard a guess. It might still be doing the Sabbat thing. I don't know. And as of the IRC, well, I did manage to get in touch with Matt Stormcrow a bit, and he says that there exists out there a relic, a mythical CD. Yes, a physical piece of media CD, which apparently contains years and years of IRC backups. Because you see, most IRC programs keep a .txt file of the contents of every IRC channel that you've been on. And I assume that's what this CD contains. Just tons and tons of ancient and very useful files. Who has it? I don't know. Where is it? I don't know either. And it seems like Matt doesn't. It sounded the way he talked like he certainly didn't have it, and he's the guy who created Sanguinus. I hope it's still out there and it can be found. Hopefully this video reaches somebody and they can go to the warehouse where it is hidden by top men, find it, upload it, and at least that way we can have a little permanent piece of all of that collective fiction that was created over the years. Because I didn't mention it, and I should have, but Sanguinus was, and I think still is, the oldest 24-hour roleplay thing that has ever existed. In terms of like vampire, it's certainly the longest. If you go outside of that, hard to tell. Most of the discords I've been in are not 24 hours. They're session based. We try and recruit some people, grab them by the hand, and like get a little scene going, and then it's over and you leave. This was not Sanguinus. You could do it like that. You could like talk to somebody, hey, I want to do a scene, but you could just jump into Elysium or into the street, and if somebody was there, sick. If nobody was, then no problem. People even roleplay like each street they were in before reaching the Elysium. You know, doing a whole like open world travel type thing. I don't think most people did, but you could. So as I said, really immersive for something that was text only, and that's one of the things that I think made Sanguinus special. There's a few things, honestly, that made it special. The immersiveness was one thing. I've had some comments from people back then where apparently they lost sleep over Sanguinus because they just couldn't log off. It was almost like an MMORPG in that sense. And there was something to it. It wasn't massive, but the population, I think, was just right. You could know almost everybody who was relatively active, with a few people just coming in like, who? Mysterious new person, stranger. And that was one of the fun part. A lot of modern discords are massive with hundreds of people. You could never get to know all of these assholes. And that's a negative when it comes to this kind of LARP experience, personally. Because getting to know everybody is one of the greatest feelings. It's like an old school MMO when people talk about WoW, where you get to see these people that you recognize the name of again and again throughout your leveling adventure. That creates the feeling of a real fucking world. Or in this case, a real fucking community. That's what I loved about Sanguinus. Sanguinus. I sang it out. That's what I loved about Sang. And there were many things. Another thing that helped with that, I think, is a thing I omitted to talk about, which was the live feeding system. You see, in World of Darkness, you need to drink blood. That's basic Vampire 101, right? You have a blood pool, which you can use to cast spells, regenerate and stuff, but it also depletes on its own. If you run out of blood, your beast is gonna take over and you're gonna go hack and slash on some random schmuck. So you wanna feed, and you wanna feed often, because if you feed when you're really hungry, you still have a chance of killing the guy because you're too thirsty and you just empty the dude. Whereas if you feed when you're like in the middle, then you can stop, just leave him bedazzled and confused and fuck off. which is generally recommended if you're a, you know, gentlemanly member of society, like Clive was. So, and this blood pool in Sanguinus would go down in real time. This seemed simple, and it really was. All you had to do was you went into a channel made for that, enter the command, roll the dice, and if you rolled over a set number, you were fine. If you rolled under, you need to go talk to a storyteller and do a scene. And that's it. So you had an incentive to come to the Sanguinus IRC every few days at minimum to feed. And by that point, you're in the IRC, you're in the out of character, you're saying hi, you're seeing some people in the Elysium, they're talking about something interesting, so I'll join in. And just like that, you're role playing, baby. It's that fucking simple. Genius piece of design right there. It's like a thing from mobile games, but used for good. Well, good is debatable, but it was well fucking used with the live feeding. Absolutely perfect. The vibes were also something that really helped. New Corsica was a really nice setting. As I said, Matt sort of described it as a bit of a Gotham City type of place. You know, it's really dark. The place kind of sucks. It's always raining. It's a supernatural rain. Clive did once investigate, didn't find anything. Apparently, the real reason coming from Matt is that the angels look upon New Corsica and weep. And that's why it's always rains. You know, very poetic stuff. It doesn't make sense in the cosmology of World of Darkness. Probably not, but that stuff's for real nerds. And that's kind of what Sanguinus was about. It was a beautiful thing. As I said, the size, the amount of players was perfect, and the quantity of person meant that eventually you knew the people by their characters, and over time you became to know them as people, as friends. You'd see their nicknames in the forum, you'd see them do the changes on the wiki, and then you'd see them later under their nickname in the IRC. And just with that loop enough, you get to know these people and get to really like them. Which is why I said, like, I was so devastated when I was banned, because these people were my fucking friends. They were some of the best people I knew online. Like, I have so many Discords. It feels like hundreds of Discords. And I barely spend time on them. It's just too many people, too many communities. You just don't get to know people that way. And it never worked, personally, like that many people. But Sanguinus, the size was just right. As I said, the roleplay was good. And the sense of danger, honestly, is one of the things that made it so addictive, so Moorish. Which is hard to say that about most other things. It was kind of unique in that way. Your character could die very easily. Vampires are difficult to kill, but it wasn't the combat. You could fuck up. You could get turned into a social pariah. If you wanted to avoid the axe to the head, you had to be on your A game. You had to think about your actions, and by God, your actions had consequences. Oh yes, they did. And that was, again, it was the genius of it. And I'm sure it wasn't like thought about, it wasn't like designed, it just came out naturally, because that's just like what World of Darkness encourages you to do. Which is why it's such a good series of RPGs. The danger doesn't just lie in the bad guy, in the NPCs with the health bars. It lies in everything else. The life of a vampire is not easy. And Sanguinus wasn't easy. Like, I think about my priest character who died on the first night. It sucked ass, and as I said, like, I don't think it would have gone that way a little while back. But it's the Sabbat. The Sabbat is way more dangerous. It's more lethal, it's more combat, it's more everything, except the social. So, yeah, deaths would come a bit easier. That's just like a thing that can happen. And And it wasn't like that with the Camarilla, but it was the difference that made it feel, it was that difference that made it special. You felt like the Sabbat was more deadly, or at least the vibes were different. And that's what I enjoyed so much with Sang. That's what I enjoyed so much with Sang. It was not your usual IRC, and I have looked. I have searched high and low. I've searched on the old decaying IRC with still like 5 people on it. I've searched Discords, World of Darkness, anything close to it, anything completely different, and couldn't really find a perfect replacement. And I don't think it exists. It's a bit of a shame, really, but honestly, anything that lived so long and had to end, I don't think it ever was going to end like in a way that makes people feel fulfilled, right? Except maybe like it turning into a social hub for all of these people, like the old IRC chat that I once had, where you get like a message a week, and it's just kind of kept there as an archival of memories, and it's generally not seen as a positive thing to wallow in memories and what could have been and what was. It's better to think about the future and move forward. And I think that's sort of the local wisdom, which I think is about right. It feels terrible when you forget something that you love. It feels terrible when you forget the name of somebody whom you called a really good friend. It feels really sad when there was this place that you used to go where everybody knew your name, and now it's gone. And even in your head, it's starting to leave. So you're grasping at straws, trying to find everything, that website, that internet archive, that medical CD. But it's not really going to fulfill you, even if you find it. You're just going to want to find more of it. You're just going to want to wallow in that old stuff. And eventually you're just going to run out. Like, you can't archive everything. You can't archive the entire internet. And you can't archive the role plays you had with friends. The nights spent hunched over your laptop, sitting in your shitty college dorm bed, endlessly typing away, laughing, crying, being stressed out that, oh, this is going to be the moment my character is going to fucking die. You can't bring that back. And, like, unless you were to do a revival, you probably shouldn't. Now, would a revival be bad? I don't think so. Even if it's with new people under new management, a new thing can always be nice because, maybe if it's not for you, hopefully it can create similar memories for somebody else, I think that's a nice thing. I think that's something you can strive for. It reminds me a lot of, and I'm sure I'll have some stories about that at some point, of my old college club, the Catacombs. And it was a tabletop club. We had RPGs, we had LARPs, we had everything. Board games, war games, you name it, we had it. It was my best time. College was made amazing because of it. And nowadays, after COVID, it's changed completely. It's not what it used to be. It's just a couple of friends hanging out in ancient hollowed halls. And they can't really capture, nor do they want to capture, the grandeur that was back then. They're not trying to. They're not really following the old codes. But, at least they're having fun with friends. They're going to leave college in 3-4 years. And they're going to remember that time. They're going to remember those board games and those friends. Even if the friends are gone and even if they never play that board game again. And is it a shame that they don't get like the full experience, the chunky thing, the LARPs, the meetings, the in-jokes? Sure, it's not the same. And in some way it's a bit worse. But if the original was amazing and the sequel is only a little bit better or a little bit worse, it's still close enough to greatness to hold some amount of memories. It's not the best possible thing. It's not the optimized way of getting those memories at you. But, a memory's a memory. And if it makes you smile, then that works too, I think. There's no difference between smiles. Nostalgia is a hell of a drug, after all, but we all need our vices sometime. Ain't nothing wrong with some indulgence. That's something you learn from playing a vampire. That's all about being indulgent. Indulging in your desires, but not letting yourself be controlled by your desires. Not letting yourself be made a slave to your inner beast. I think that's a good lesson to have. The beast, it is dangerous, but at the end of the day, it's just there to protect you. It's just there to keep you alive. And if a little bit of memory, if a little bit of indulgence is what keeps you alive, then what's wrong with that? If you recognize it, if you control it, I don't see a problem with that. And hey, this is what this show is, I think. It's remembering the good old times so that they get to stay on for a little bit longer. And hey, there's always new stories to be made, which is why I think this kind of show has some potential. So, hopefully I'll get to make a few more of these in the future. And I wish you all a very nice afternoon.